Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Autry and I will be presenting on taiko and how it represented the symbol of Asian American culture. The literal translation of taiko from Japanese to English means big drum, and taiko really didn't get popular until around the 1950s when it became a performing art and started to be performed outside of Japan. Compared to the usual quiet people, this gave them a booming voice to express their heritage, especially those who immigrated to America. For this assignment, I have prepared a short video presentation that will give you guys a brief introduction on how taiko not only immigrated to America, but how it became a symbol for the Asian American people. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and thank you. Taiko might not be the type of music that one would hear every day, but this instrument was imperative to the Asian American community. With its loud, powerful boom and the energetic moves of the performers, the drum contrasted with the usual quiet people. When the first Japanese immigrants moved to the United States in the 20th century, the taiko drum was a symbol that connected them back to their roots and their culture. However, back in Japan, taiko was a very spiritual instrument and was only to be played during special ceremonies or celebrations such as New Year's. Japanese Americans immigrated to America as early as the start of the 20th century. For the Issei, or also called the first generation Japanese Americans, life was difficult for them. Most of them were considered working class, and the only real break they got was during New Year's Eve and Day, called Obon and Oshugatsu in Japan. It not only was entertaining to the Issei, but the celebration reminded them of where they came from and how all of them were connected to each other in their community. Even when the Japanese Americans were imprisoned in the internment camps, they celebrated Obon. Asian Americans in general would have it hard after the attack of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. These Asian Americans, even those who were not of Japanese descent, would be interred in isolated camps from 1941 to 1945. However, many of the Japanese immigrants in these camps would play taiko, fashioned from various materials, to remember their home country of Japan. They even had taiko performers and dancers. It is rare, but there are a handful of documents, pictures, and even videos. After the internment camps were over, these people were deathly afraid of being forced back in. Many Japanese Americans would suppress their heritage, not wanting their children to speak Japanese or stick out. They were deathly afraid that the internment camps could happen again at any time. These people suppressed their culture in fear of racism and being imprisoned once again. It wouldn't be until taiko became a performing art in the 1950s when these Japanese Americans could connect once more to their roots in a comfortable and safe setting. Even then, taiko was usually performed for a special occasion, usually festivals and rituals. It was around 1969 when Reverend Maso Kodani was putting away a drum after a ritual that him and another member, George Abe, started to play the drum. They played for hours, and even with bloodied and blistered hands, they declared it was fun. These two men, and other sansei, also called grandchildren of Japanese immigrants, used taiko as a way for them to connect to their heritage and Japanese culture. The two formed the group Kinara Taiko, and it was one of the very first taiko groups in America, formed by Japanese Americans. Yet a year before, in 1968, a taiko performer named Sechi Tanaka started performing in San Francisco in local Japanese festivals. Tanaka was a student of the Japanese taiko groups Osuwa Taiko and O-Edo Sukeruko Taiko, who were also the groups responsible for breaking taiko out of its strict Japanese traditions. He brought back drumming techniques and rhythms with him to America from Japan, and is often named the grandfather of American Taiko. Tanaka was especially important in developing Taiko in North America, bringing with him a teaching style that was similar to martial arts training. He became a Taiko teacher in San Francisco, forming a group called San Francisco Taiko-Do. His training considered discipline and physical mental strength to be essential for the performers to learn. On the other end, Kinara Taiko had a more laid-back approach to teaching their students. The Kinara Taiko students studied under Reverend Kodani's philosophy that Taiko could be used for Buddhist training and as a means to help individuals overcome their ego. Sechi Tanaka was considered a hard teacher. A lot of his students would quit, and only a few students remained, around 10% of them. He would have his students work hard enough to break a sweat. And Tanaka is quoted saying, "No pain, no gain, and to have pain is beautiful." That's my original idea, my philosophy. In Japanese culture, pain helped build your character. It tests you. Even though each group had a different teaching style, they would pioneer and lead Taiko into performance music in America. Around 1973, another group by the name of San Jose Taiko would combine both elements of San Francisco Taiko Dojo and Kinara Taiko. The group would stay true to Sechi Tanaka's traditional style and aesthetic, while sticking to Kinara's philosophy to help overcome one's ego. In the process, San Jose Taiko would make their own style. The three groups I mentioned would inspire Japanese Americans to see Taiko as a symbol of their heritage and help develop their own voice in America. While Taiko was an important instrument to connect to the Asian American heritage, when groups were starting to form in 1969, they could not afford to buy drums. As a solution, Taiko groups would start making their own drums, usually materials they found at hardware stores. Their first attempts may have been crude, but as time went on, they learned from their mistakes. In the process, these groups would share tips with each other, further involving themselves with other Asian American groups. In crafting the drum and taking special care, they forged a bond with it, finding that each drum is unique and embodies its own spirit.